Hello and welcome to the D365 Insights podcast brought to you by Sourcing Connect. Today is our ninth episode, which is all around understanding dual write in Dynamics 365 from a technical architect's perspective. Today, I'm really excited to introduce to you Tom Burnett. Tom is a technical architect and dual write integration specialist and has worked with Microsoft Dynamics for over 25 years. So, hi, Tom. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast.
Yeah, good to be here. I'm very excited. Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever the listeners are in the world.
Absolutely. So, to begin with, then, Tom, can you introduce yourself and your role as a technical architect in the Dynamics 365 space?
I've been working with Dynamics since 1999. Many roles. Firstly, as functional consultant, technical solution, and gathered uh, customer engagement along the way. It's been quite a long time in Dynamics. So yeah.
Fantastic. So, for those who are new to the concept, what exactly is dual write and why was it introduced by Microsoft?
You're right. First and foremost, it is an integration tool.
Hmm.
Um, what I think is also worth mentioning as well, it is not a data migration tool. Because some projects make the mistake that it can be used for data migration. So, first and foremost, it's an integration tool. And when the users see Dualite through the UI, they're going to see a load of Dualite maps that represent pieces of data like customers, products, suppliers, and so forth. And when they open one of these maps up, they're going to see a list of field mappings. And, you know, I think when Microsoft introduced this, it made it so much better and easier for projects to be able to connect customer engagement and F&O stroke supply chain together
Yeah.
um, without having to resort to building integration from scratch using APIs, and it becomes expensive and it takes a very long time to deliver that in a project. With these tools, it bridges the gap between F&O and CM that much closer. In the old days, back in time, you had to use tools like BizTalk or develop custom API. So now it's much, much better. Yeah.
Fantastic. So, what would you say are the main benefits for a business to use dual write?
For me, I think I have five.
Okay.
Top five for me is technical. You've got this dual write integration tool that's out of the box. It delivers you the maps for each piece of data. So as I said earlier, customers, products, sales orders, right out of the box.
Mm.
That's much faster route to testing and hence faster project delivery times. So that's the technical aspect. In terms of skills required, you don't need to go and get an expensive developer that's got an experience in tools and technology like BizTalk or APIs. In terms of skill, it's very easy to get it started.
Yeah.
So data, the third one for me, and this is not in any order of importance. So data, uh, it provides for validation of the data. It's got built-in logic. It won't just accept the data. It has to be validated. In terms of accuracy, it's good. It's going to remove errors like that in terms of data. And then the fourth one, speed. You can get Joule up and running in a day.
Wow,
Map
that's really quick.
running, yeah. And then the last
Yeah.
one for me is ease. It's the ease with which you can get Joule set up and the first map running. It really is not that complicated. So yeah, those are the top five for me.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. So how does Dual technically connect D365 finance and operations with Dataverse?
Yeah, so it uses a mix of technology, all provided by Microsoft within the Dual solution. So you have what's called the data integrator that underpins the Dual framework, and this is hosted by Microsoft. Then you've got the entities. So you have entities in F&O, and then you have entities in CE. So they're like kind of like tables. And these entities, you have, say, an entity for customers in FO, entity for customers in CE, and you have these mapped together.
Hmm.
It also delivers virtual entities. So that's where, for example, you have data in F&O, reference data, let's say customer groups. You don't necessarily want to have CE to have those customer groups as well, because then you've got the data in two places. So what happens here is that when you create customer in CE, they can use a virtual entity, go and look, make a call to FO to check and validate that customer group valid. So the data doesn't need to be in two systems. And you've got the plugins. So these are so when you install the Dual package solutions, that also implements plugins for CE side. Um, then you have the data management framework in F&O, which is leveraged by Dual. So that basically imports, exports the data out as the Dual map is synchronizing data. Um, then you have the OData calls. So that's making the call between CE and F&O I want to grab some data and send it across. So, and then the key one of the key pieces of the technology is an orchestration service. So that provides for the synchronization logic. So that's really key.
Hmm.
And then finally, there's the Azure Service Bus, which provides for the message queuing, so that when it sends a message from FO to CE, it's queuing it up in a sequence. So, for me, those are the key mix of technologies that are delivered by Microsoft. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So in your experience, what are the most important components or architecture elements that teams need to understand for enabling dual rights?
Yeah, good question. So there's quite a few elements. I'm not going to name them all. We'll be here all day. So yeah, so I mean, design the requirements first. You know, your pieces of data that you want to synchronize. So you want to design the setup stroke configuration data,
Mhm.
what you want to synchronize from FO to CE, for example, or vice versa. Your master data. So, what pieces of data do you want to synchronize in terms of master data? So that's your customers, your suppliers, straight vendors, your products. So, get that design in paper or, Word document, Excel. Get that laid out first, because that's going to be your blueprint. And then you want to design the synchronization direction. So that basically means which system's the master. So will CE be the master?
Mhm.
And therefore the synchronization direction will be from CE to FO for the map, most of the field and the map. Um, so get that synchronization direction embedded in first, and then you have within the map, you need to understand and design the transformation. So these are values so there'll be some values in F&O that will be foreign to CE. So F&O, we have fields in F&O that are like yes, no fields. But in CE, the value is true or false. So you need a transform map that says when a record has a flag that's enabled and it's yes, basically in FO, but you need a transform in the map to say that it's going to send a true value to to CE. So that's the transforms. And the other thing with transforms is that FO uses base enums and CE uses option set values, and they can be a series of numbers, 7 or 8 digit numbers, but CE can be English values. So you need to identify what the transformation values are first and foremost. And yes, so most of the standard out of the box map do contain those, but there might be some you might want to have as custom. Um, then you want to identify the filters and the dual right map. So you've got to design the whole um, blueprint of what data you're synchronizing, and filters help to say that, well, I don't want to synchronize 100,000 records. I only want to synchronize a few 50,000 of those, because I'm going to have filters in there, and that's all what CE needs. So yeah, filters are important. And then you want to identify the sequence that you're going to run the maps in. So, you know, dual right has relies on data dependency. So, before you can synchronize customers, you need customer groups in CE, and they're mastered in F&O. You need payment terms before you can synchronize customer groups, because payment terms can be on a customer group. So you need to synchronize payment terms to FO, to CE first, then your customer group, and then it's has that important data dependency. You need to have that understanding. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I mean, those are pretty key elements, components, and then there's your security roles for the dual right users who are going to manage it, and then the naming convention for any custom data entity, custom map, that's key as well. So yeah, that's probably enough.
Sounds like an amazing piece of kit.
Yeah.
Very, very complex.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, and typically, well, from my experience, have been sort of much larger clients that are implementing CE and F&O and dual right, aren't they? So they have a lot of data.
Yes.
Um, yeah, yeah. So what are the key data flow scenarios dual right is typically used for?
Yeah. So your first, okay, I'm going to break this up into three buckets in terms of key data flow scenarios. So your three key data buckets will be your setup and configuration data. Then it's followed by your master data, and then it's followed by your transactional data. So that's your sales orders, your purchase orders. So for the first bucket, the key data flow scenarios will be setup configuration data like your customer group payment terms, units of measure, sites and warehouses. All of those pieces of data you need to synchronize from FO to CE. Then we have the second bucket of data, which is your master data, and that's going to be your suppliers, your customers, your products, so forth. And then followed by your transactional data, your sales orders and purchase orders. So yeah, they're the key data flow scenarios. Yeah.
Thank you. So moving on to sort of planning and setup then, what should a team do before they enable dual right on project?
Yeah, so there can be quite a few things. It won't be in any order of importance, because they're all equally as important as each other. So, I mean, decide first of all which environments you're going to link with dual right
Mm,
between E and F and O. Identify those first. So, the absolute key one to start off with is you're going to have a dual right development environment, because this is where you need to make those changes to the maps and then deploy them. So you'll have a dual right dev environment on FO side plus a dev environment on CE side. Then you'll have your dual right test environment to test those changes. So dual right test and a dual right test environment on CE and FO side. Then you will have your F&O test environments, your non-production environments, and your CE non-production. And then finally, a pre-prod environment. I'm talking about much larger projects. If they're smaller scale and there's budgets involved, then some project might not have a pre-prod. They'll have a UAT environment. So yeah, again, identify which are the key environments you're going to lead with Durai. Probably the first and foremost. And then what we're going to do is we're going to identify which solution packages you're going to implement. So that's going to be driven by basically what the customer is using in CE and what the customer have to know. What I mean by that is, in CE, you can have customer engagement for sales, customer engagement for customer service, marketing, and field service. And then on the FO side, you're going to have, the FO modules for finance, and then your supply chain, manufacturing, and so on, resources. And Microsoft, back in the day, only had one solution package you would deploy, and that would deploy all the map for everything, regardless of whether you had those apps or not in CE, or whether you were using all the modules or not. But now what Microsoft have done is they've split the one package out into multiple solution packages. So this is where I'm saying you need to decide which solution packages you want to install on the CE side. So there'll be a solution package for human resources, one for asset management, one for finance, one for supply chain, and so on. So, if the customer's not using asset management and F&O, then there's no point installing that solution. So, that's why you need to identify which solution packages you're going to install, and they need to be installed in a certain order as well, because within those packages they have dependencies. So, you've got to install them in a certain sequence.
Mm-hmm.
And then, it's probably identify who's going to manage your right. What I see often is multiple people trying to manage the dual right, and that kind of there can be pros and cons in that, but it can cause confusion and misunderstandings of who's doing what. You
Yeah.
really should nominate one person who's going to be responsible and managing the dual rights from the project start to project go live and operation handover, knowledge transfer. So that I think for me that's key. One person responsible. And then, you want to have script ready to hand. So which check and validate the data. So let's say on starting July, you're going to start to synchronize your setup data from FO to CE, for example. So let's say you're going to synchronize products. And then, in F&O, you've got, say, 5,000 product records. You want to know that 5,000 product records got synchronized to CE, and then you want to look at the data and check it. So you need to have scripts ready to say that here's the count in FO and here's the count in CE, and do they all match? And then get some script that present key data like unit of measure, the site, the warehouse, model group, and FO, validate that in CE, make sure they all match up as well. I mean, it is quite intensive, but data accuracy is key, because if you don't get that accuracy, then when you start doing transactions, that's when you're going to get problems. And then I guess finally, have testers on standby to test, doing some data creation in CE and data creation in F&O, seeing that synchronized from FO to CE and from CE to FO. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So, are there any prerequisites or hidden dependencies that often get overlooked?
Yeah, there can be many. I guess things like, if they're hidden, it'll be something like transforms within the map, within the field and the mapping. So as I mentioned earlier, transforms are where there's a value in F&O that's foreign to CE, so you'll have a transform. So it'll be like the order statuses picked in F&O will be a 7 or 8 digit option set value on CE. So you need to, those sometimes can get missed. Yes, I said that there will be transformed out of the box that come with the mapping, but you might have some different you might have some custom statuses. So you need to make sure that you capture all those. And this is where I was going back to saying by having one person responsible for dual right, they need to be involved in all with the functional and with the data migration team because that transform is so key to making the success of a sync happen.
Yeah.
Then you've got, there might be things like missing reference data. Maybe you missed a sync of a config or setup related piece of data for a dual right map. Let's say you missed the sync for, something obscure, and that can be something like financial dimensions for. And there can be different types of financial dimensions. You can have a financial dimension for a cost center or a financial dimension for, I don't know, a brand or a
Mhm.
product. And if you don't synchronize those and you miss them, then, you can get issues that will tell you that you're missing some reference data. I guess the other thing is when there is a code release, whether it's CE side or FO side, or when there's a platform update, and again, whether it's FO or CE side, you need to involve the dual right because there are steps you need to take before you do the release or before you do the platform update. And then there are steps you need to take with dual right post deployment on CE or FO side when it's a platform update or a code release because that involves taking down environments while the release is going on or while there's a platform up. That impacts dual right and impacts synchronization. So you need to take steps to bring dual right into that aspect of it. That can get missed quite easily, and that can cause significant issues because then what you will end up with data in one system not being synchronized to another.
Mm.
So.
Yeah,
And there can be field lengths. You can have a field in F&O that's 20 characters, but the field that it's mapped to in CE might only be 10 characters. You got
yeah,
to watch out for those. And then finally, last one is data type mismatch. A good example is date value or date field types. So
yeah,
F&O typically has date time fields, and sometimes CE will only contain the date and not the time. So you need to watch out for those. Yeah.
yeah. All things you might not think about.
Yeah,
Um,
correct. Yeah, yeah.
so how do you decide which table to think and what risks are involved with syncing too much?
Yeah, I mean, that can only come from an understanding and experience, really. If you're new to Java, you're not going to have that level of knowledge. That comes from experience, and an understanding in terms of functional. There's not going to be many people out there who have a functional knowledge of CE and a functional knowledge of F&O and then the technical aspects of it. So, for example, with deciding which table to sync, then that's going to come from the requirements. So, you've got to involve the dual right person responsible and to the functional workshops so that they get those requirements and then, and as well as the data migration team, because from the functional workshop, you're going to know that, well, okay, there's an end-to-end process here that where the customer journey starts in CE and then the customer wants it to finish in F&O, or they want the enrichment of that customer account data to be done in F&O and then all of that to be synchronized back to CE so that they can place an order with a customer. So that end-to-end journey of a customer or an end-to-end journey of a sales order being involved in the functional workshop, you're going to know what tables that are required to sync, and what data is needed. So yeah, you've got to have experience of the those processes.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So, what are the most common mistakes you've seen teams make with dual writes?
Um, yeah, I mean, I mentioned this earlier. First and foremost, Dualwrite is not a data migration tool. I mean,
Mm.
I've seen, customer project where they've got 100,000 customer records, and the data migration team gone and said, well, we're going to migrate all of those into CE first, and then we'll use Dualwrite to sync that across. But that'll make it quicker and easier for us because it'll create the data in the F&O for us. What you got to remember is there are some limitations, and when you do what's called an initial sync to sync your first set of data between the two systems, that sync has to complete within 24-hour time period. It doesn't work like, okay, you can have 250,000 record, and we're just going to wait for Dualright to finish that sync. And you think it might take two days. It doesn't work like that. Dualright works on within in the initial sync that works within that 24-hour period. So Dualright does not have that capability to transfer that volume of records. There's a limit of 70,000 records for, say, customers, because the customer V3 Dualright map is quite a big map. It can contain up to 70 fields. So, out of the box. So, first and foremost, it's not a data migration tool.
Yeah.
Secondly, I recently saw a customer still running on the old version of Dualright, which is the one package solution. Now, the way Microsoft have it now, they split the solution packages out. So, solution package for human resources, asset management, finance, supply chain, so on. Because they were still running on the old version of Dualright solution package, they were seeing bugs
Mm.
that had been fixed by Microsoft. So, can be an expensive mistake, and easily rectified
Mm.
by updating those solution packages and installing them. So, that's some examples. And I've seen issues where they've included all the legal entities that are set up in F&O, which is a foreign concept to CE.
Mm.
So a legal entity is a company, a legal company. So you can have a project where a group of companies, so one in France, one in the UK, one in Spain, Italy, whatever, and those are legal entities basically in F&O, but in CE that's foreign concept. So you have a Dualright map that says synchronize all of the legal entities over to CE, and therefore every entity or table in CE will then have a field referencing the company for that piece of data it belongs to. And what I've seen is where Dualright's been set up to synchronize every piece of data for every legal entity when that's not the requirement.
Mm.
And it's created quite a mess in CE where you've got data in there that shouldn't be. So
Yeah.
to resolve that, you have to remove all that data, and then disable the legal entity in Dualright. That's quite a biggie. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, you might have already answered this next question. Have you ever had a situation where dual write caused serious issues? What happened and how did you resolve it?
Yeah, so yeah. So that can be many things. How we resolve it is in terms of, okay, that example with the legal entity where the data shouldn't have got migrated, you have no option but to go in and identify all those records. So you'll have to use tool like there's the XRM toolbox, which has got the SQL for CDS query
Hmm.
tool, PE.
Yeah.
You'll have to write some query that says, give me all the data that belong to this legal entity from all of these tables. Um, and then what you'll have to do, once you've identified those records, deactivate them all, and then go and remove the legal entity from the dual right map configuration. But to do that, you'll have to stop all of the dual right map to remove that legal entity and then restart them all. So that particular issue is quite messy.
Yeah.
You
Sounds
know,
it.
yeah. Um, yeah, other things have been, typical ones like not putting filters on dual right map, which means you're synchronizing more data than you should be. And then again, you'll have to go and deactivate those records. And then what you'll have to do is stop the dual right map, change the filters. Um, but you'll have to do that in a dual right dev environment, deploy it through the right process. And then, that filter then active and then, yeah. So dual right is real time synchronization. So you've got to be really careful about how you implement it and build it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what's your view on dual right and custom entities or extensions? Is it always feasible?
Yes, and it's inevitable. Um, you could have a project where there's an ISV that's been implemented, and the ISV will come along with their own custom entities in F&O. And
Hmm.
potentially they could have custom entities in CE as well if the ISV is working in both systems. Um, but even it applies, even if it's on FO side. So, and there's nothing in CE. So what that means is if they've got custom entities and the requirement is to have that data in CE synchronized, which means you'll have to have a dual right map for that custom entity from that ISV, or it's one that you develop within the project itself. Then on the CE side, you will have to build that custom entity to make that data synchronized. Yeah, make the dual right map, do the field mapping. So yeah, it's inevitable that you're going to come across this. You might have the standard out of the box map from Microsoft, but then you want to add some fields to it, and
Mm.
they might be standard fields on the entity that are out of the box, or you might have added new custom field to an existing entity, then yeah, you'll have to do the same on CE so that the mapping will work in terms of synchronizing the data. So yeah, I mean, it's inevitable you're going to get this.
Yeah.
And if you're first time user of Purelight, then that's where sometimes you're going to struggle.
Yeah. Yeah. So moving on to governance and best practices, how should program directors or functional leads approach governance around dual right, especially in complex programs?
That is actually a really key question. It's a good one. So, um, Dual is much more than a technical solution. And as I said earlier, it's an integration solution, fully integration.
Mm.
And in terms of governance, what you've got to make sure of right from the outset is have a nailed release process. Do not have a situation, what you don't want is the situation where changes to dual map are being made directly in the test environment or even in production. Yes, I've seen this. Uh, because then what happens is then you'll end up with dual maps that are different between the same dual map having differences between the environment and you don't know which one's the true version.
Mm.
So in terms of governance, always have a release process that starts with dual dev environment. Only make your changes in the dev environment. Then you package up the dual solution, release it to test environment, test it, and then you're happy with it. Do a release to the non-production environments and involve the release team, so the change manager. to, document those changes. That all part of governance, and make sure that I cannot stress that enough, because otherwise you'll end up in a situation where you've got a map that's got a field in here, but not in this environment, and it's not in that environment. There's another field here in this environment. So yeah,
Yeah,
um, so yeah,
absolutely.
that's very key. Yeah, yeah,
Mm. I actually did a podcast with somebody else recently on governance in D365 programs and understand how imperative it is to have it in place.
yeah,
So what kind of monitoring and alerting do you recommend once Dual Write is live?
yeah. So there is a functionality. You have to enable it. It's there. Microsoft give it to you, but they don't enable it out of the box, because if they did, then you'll end up with a whole lot of data. So what I mean by that is you can enable, in terms of capturing or troubleshooting issues. Um, For monitoring, you can enable debug mode on specific dual maps. So when you enable debug mode, what that means is then dual will start logging payloads. So when you synchronize a customer account between F&O and CE, or vice versa, dual will log the payload. So the payload will contain all the fields it's sending between the two systems, and that payload ends up in the dual error log table. So that can help you identify what the payload is being sent at runtime when it synchronizes it, and that helps with troubleshooting. So there are things like telemetry you can use in F&O, but you have to implement that. I've done that for quite a few customers, implement telemetry so we can get a lot more underlying detail data about any dual issues in terms of synchronization. There is a option called health check that comes with dual. You can run health check on the maps, or you can run a health check on the framework that can, might tell you what the issue is. And in terms of alerting, yeah, you can set up alerts that will notify an email distribution group of any potential issues that might have happened overnight with any synchronization, particularly when, in F&O, you could have import jobs running on a scheduled basis during the night, and they might trigger dual sync to sync data over to FCE. So you'll have alerts off the back of that if there are any errors. So yeah,
Brilliant, thank you. So are there any best practices you always follow regardless of project size or sector?
yes. There's a few. Again, always make your dual map changes in a dev environment. Don't make those changes that's directly in a test or prod environment.
Okay.
And that's probably number one for me.
Mhm.
Best practice, yeah, again, always move your dual map changes through the solution package. Create the solution package in dev, import it into a test environment, check it, and so forth. Always move them through a solution package, and it's a managed solution package for CE.
Mm.
Don't deploy it as unmanaged, because then if you do that, you're going to be able to make changes in that environment. So if you make it as a managed solution, they can't make those changes. Um, Always follow pre-deployment, post-deployment steps when it comes to doing platform update, whether that's CE side or whether it's FO side, or when it comes to doing code releases, whether it's CE side or FO side, because again, when you take those environments down, something's got to happen with dual. And what you've got to do puts dual in a state that says, pause the sync, queue up the messages while I'm doing a code release or while I'm doing a platform update. And when I'm finished, I go back, take it out of pause, and then what Dualite will do will then process those queued up messages in the right order of sequence. That's vital, because if you don't do that, then what you'll end up with is a system out of sync with the other, in terms of, well, when you turned off the F&O environment to do your release or platform update, you've had no data messages queued up, which means anything that was might be potentially happening during the time it went down or during the time it went up, you've missed those updates or inserts. Yeah. So
Yeah,
that yeah.
brilliant. Thank you. So, sort of looking forward now, how do you see the future of dual write evolving, especially with Power Platform maturing so rapidly?
Yeah, so the future is bright. I put
Mhm.
your like it's going to be around for a long time. Microsoft have made investments in this. And one of the new things that are coming out in the next couple of months is the asynchronous mode feature. This is going to be very useful particularly for high volume environment, because basically what it means is then you can say, well, I'm for these dual-write maps that involve setup or configuration data where the volumes are very small, they don't change very often. Good example like that is unit of measure or customer group. You don't create new groups every day. So
Mm.
they will be designated for synchronous mode. Where it's asynchronous, will be for sales orders where you might have high volume sales orders going through. So, if you've got 10,000 orders going through the system, whether it's in CE or whether it's in F&O, that's definitely a candidate for asynchronous mode. So that's a great feature that's coming out soon for Dual-Write. What I can see evolving with Dual-Write is that currently I call it the Dual-Write cockpit, where you go into FO, your data management tile, you'll see the Dual-Write in F&O. I see that moving over into the Dataverse space, away from taking out of the FO UI and more into Dataverse. I see where it's evolving. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, brilliant. Thank you. So, are there any tools or features you wish Microsoft would add to improve the dual write experience?
Yeah, I have two actually. I
Okay,
hope Microsoft are listening because
tag them in.
one of them is the JSON formatted payload. It's
Hmm.
when you look at it, it is terrible to read because it can contain the payload, and the payload can have, you know, 70, 80 fields, and it's all one giant string of data. There'll be other bits of data in there as well, not just the payload field, and it's terrible to read. And when you're trying to troubleshoot something, and especially it's in a production environment, and you need to uh, time is of the essence. We need some kind of JSON payload formatter so that it makes it easier to read that message or that payload. Split the fields out so that we can see it in a more friendly, readable format. That's one. And
Okay.
secondly, um, I think there needs to be more in the way of telemetry for Dual-Write, because right now there isn't any. You have to build that. You have to implement telemetry yourself. Um, if Microsoft could do something in that area, that will be really beneficial in terms of, troubleshooting. So yeah, those two are one of the things I would like to see.
Yeah, excellent. So, last couple of questions now, Tom. If someone is new to dual write, what's the one thing they should absolutely get right at the start?
Yeah, so get the design right, whether it's an Excel or Word, get that design nailed. And then what I mean, as I said earlier, design your maps in Excel, design the flow direction, identify which system's going to be the master, because then that will decide your flow direction. Um, get involved in the functional workshop, because that's going to tell you what data is going to be needed in CE from FO and what data is going to be needed in FO from CE. Critically important you get involved in that. critically important that the dual right person gets involved with data migration teams. Um, Dual right going to impact literally all of the multiple work streams in a project, the finance, human resources, sale, purchase, inventory, warehousing, because all of those pieces of data might be needed in CE and an F&O. And who nominate a person who's going to be the owner of Jura and be responsible for that part. Don't have 4 or 5 people owning Jura. It will just cause confusion. So
Mm,
nominate one person. So yeah,
yeah, thank you. So, any final advice for architects or consultants working on dual right integrations for the first time?
don't struggle. If this is your first rodeo with Jura, don't try and do it all on your own. Get help. Don't
Mm,
struggle. There's nothing wrong with asking for help. That would be
yeah,
my golden advice.
perfect. Thank you. Well, Tom, that's been so insightful for myself and also for the listeners. I'm obviously not technical, but I did manage to follow most of that, which was really good. But yeah, clearly a very good product, and that businesses should be looking at this if they are implementing both F&O and CE. So yeah, thank you so much. To our listeners, you can catch D365 Insights, sorry, to our listeners, you can catch D365 Insights on Spotify and YouTube. You can also follow Sourcing Connect or myself, Sarah Moody, on LinkedIn. If there is anybody looking for a dual right integration specialist, then Tom is definitely your man. But reach out to Sarah at Sourcing Connect. And thanks again, Tom.
Yeah, thank you for having me.